Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, C. Raj Chawla, Vice Chairman, MSME and Startup Committee of ICI. I welcome you all. And today we are going to discuss in our this webinar, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, BRSR, is an update on the existing business reporting, which incorporate the current global practice in sustainability reporting based on the national guidelines for the responsible business conducts. Through this webinar, our aim is to explore how BRSR framework can empower both MSME and chartered accountant to find challenges, opportunities, and change in the direction. Our collective commitment to sustainability will build a culture of accountability, transparency, and innovation within our community as well as an organization. To deliberate on this topic, today we have with us CS Sanjay Rekhi, who will take you through the best practices that will shape the future of MSME and chartered accountants in the dynamic landscape of business responsibility and sustainability reporting for next 2 hours. So listen to our today's webinar and put your question or doubts, if any, in the place there. And also we have with us young and dynamic chartered accountant CA Shruti Singalji, our today coordinator of this webinar. And now I request her to please share the profile of our today speaker, CA Sanjay Rekhi. Over to Shruti.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, I hereby welcome Sanjay sir on this webinar. Mr. Sanjay Rekhi is a chartered accountant having more than 3 decades of corporate experience at leadership position. He served in manufacturing as well as service industry. Presently, he holds the role of consultant, coach, advisor, fractional CFO, finance business partner, and provides end-to-end assistance and facilitation to business owners towards efficient carrying out of business. He is one of the top 100 managers in action. This list was published by Tata McGraw-Hill in a book. These 100 managers were selected from amongst 8,000 managers across 200 organizations. And this selection of top 100 managers was done by renowned TV learning system. He has been widely appreciated and acknowledged for his work on analysis of the Indian business environment. This was a part of a study conducted by delegates of the William Davidson Institute at the University of Michigan School of Business Administration and the CII on Indian telecommunications infrastructure. He has been a special invitee in CII Haryana State Council. He has been a convener in finance and taxation panel in CII Haryana State Council. He is passionate about finance transformation, digitalization, and facilitates wholeheartedly towards ESG implementation. Always open to disseminate his experience and learnings, and always ready to unlearn so as to learn more. We welcome you, sir, to this webinar and look forward to understanding this complex topic of BRSR reporting from you.
Thank you, Shruti. We have with us our chairman MSME and Startup Committee, C. Dheeraj Khandelwal ji from Mumbai. So I welcome you, sir, and I request you to please give welcome address.
Thank you, Raj Chawla ji. I think this is the important topic in terms of the India, in terms of the globalization, and when we talking about the sustainability across the world and climate change, and then BRSR definitely comes into the mind. Generally, people think about it's not for the MSME. People think about, it's for the big corporate and large entities are there. And the SEBI has definitely given the mandate to 1,000 entities to report on the this sustainability aspects, and largely a lot of big corporates listed entities also reporting themselves on the BSSR. So I think the important aspect is that future acceptability and future readiness. And MSME, those are the companies are there. If they understand and they will understood this concept, they can adopt it, and that the benefits are important. So it's not about only the compliances are being imposed by the regulatory bodies. Now it's about the benefits which are available. I think if you go for the benefits, it's largely you can get the lot of funds are there in the across the world. If you are complying with the standards, and then you can reach out the low rate of interest, private equities, and even the carbon credits, and you can also trade this. You can get the benefits. So the benefits, by the vice versa, the compliances, if we see it, that's very important aspects are there. And I think thanks to the Vice Chairman Raj Chavlaji, who picked up this particular topic and invited Sanjay ji, who's eminent speaker over in this particular arena, and talking to this MSME and startup how they can comply and how they can look forward a particular this area. And I was in one conference. The World Bank is also talking about how the industries or exporter can comply on the sustainability goals so that they can get the low rate of interest loans from the various institutions. I think this is an important topic. We'll have the more such kind of topic in elaborative manner, and we have Sanjay ji. Let's hear him about the various formats and where the acceptability in the MSME industry. So thank you, Raj Chavla ji, thank you, Sanjay ji, and thank you, Shruti. I think, yeah, Shruti is, so for this particular session. So over to the Sanjay ji.
Thank you, Dheeraj ji, for setting the tone of this today's webinar. And special thanks to Shruti for those kind words spoken about me. And thank you, Chavla ji, for giving this opportunity. And thank you, ICAI, MSME, and Startup Committee to really give this good opportunity for me to really express my views on this important topic, BRSR, a growth path for MSME as well as CAs. Let me take you through the presentation flow of mine. Next, I think 120 minutes, 110 minutes almost approx would be divided into two parts. The part one would comprise of dimension one, save the earth, save the planet. I'll take you through the E, S, and G part in the ESG. Dimension two, the Indian perspective. And then followed by, it is BRSR. If it is BRSR, it is surely to do with ESG. Dimension three, help MSME grow and BRSR practice a new avenue for CAs. That is the composition of the part one of my presentation, followed by part two as to how MSMEs can encash the opportunity by aligning with BRSR and how CAs can encash this opportunity by adding BRSR practice. So the second part would be very, very busy one, while the first part would set the tone and give you the big backdrop of BRSR as well as ESG. Hope you find this next moments, 110 minutes or so, interesting for all of you. So I think this is consciously to bring in at the top of our minds to really save the planet. And let me recollect and bring back your memories of your childhood. When we were told about the 5 elements of nature, and which in Hindu mythology, we call it Pancha Mahabhuta, which is the very basis of the cosmic creation. Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, Akash, which means earth, water, fire, air, and space. These are the elements of life which need to be kept in perfect harmony to ensure harmony in life of living beings. Whenever we have found this harmony to be disturbed, we see the impact and the turbulence created in our planet. We notice it very openly today. We as human disturb this harmony in the Pancha Mahabhuta. Now we only will have to correct this. Let's deliberate this in terms of our actions and our day-to-day life so that we become part of this movement of saving this planet. Having said that, let me take you through the next slide, which has to do with the climate change effect. As very evident, if you see the temperature variation and the global warming real cause, the soaring temperature has brought out havoc in our lives. Especially so when we find the after effect of this climate change, bringing in more floods, droughts, and famines, and disturbing the populace, displacement of people, and not only just the human beings, but also the living beings, so to say. And if the corrective action is not done now, it will be too late. So we have this opportunity only to make our choices now and in the near term. This is very evident from the slide that from 1900 to 2020, the different colorations which has been depicted in this graph shows the temperature which was low has got up to a level which is already alarming and disturbing the living beings already. It will just completely perish the living beings and have the effect on our biodiversity as well as our human beings, bringing in the effect in terms of our ill health, which is shown now in my coming slide. The changes in the climate bring up extreme heat, air and water pollution, reduced food and water quality, changes in the infectious diseases and vector transmissions, increasing allergens, and directly which bring in diseases like heat-related illnesses, cardiovascular diseases, injuries and death, even mental and neurological disorders, and respiratory diseases and asthma. So what should be done? Early warnings and preparedness is a must before it gets too late for all of us. Prevention and reduction of disease, illness, and injury, followed by adoption, education, and integration. Community movements may be brought up so that then the corrective measures can be taken before it gets too late for us. My coming slide is an extension of the earlier slide, which shows very clearly, and it is self-explanatory, elaborating and emphasizing on the dire need of really attending to this on a very critical and a very urgent basis. So we notice very clearly in our day-to-day lives the increasing cases of heart stroke, heart attacks, particularly the asthma and respiratory allergies, cholera because of the water quality impacts, water and food supply impacts, the malnutrition and the diarrhea kind of diseases, post-migration of civil conflicts and mental health impacts, which are brought up because of the environmental degradation. Extreme heat brings up death and cardiovascular failures, just to repeat. So this is the backdrop, emphasizing on the very need of becoming a part of this movement and see that what we can do in our individual capacities to really contribute wholeheartedly. The continued global warming brings up an immediate corrective measure as issuers of this problem to stand committed to the global accord. And the global accord is we need to restrict the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This would definitely need increased flow of investors, funding to such issuers, so that then we are able to achieve this target, which we have tried to really save our living beings as a whole and save this planet. I mentioned in my presentation flow to really see and understand very clearly what does E stand for, which we know obviously is environment, and what things that count under environment. This slide shows very clearly as many as 10 things which compositely comprise of environment per se. Emissions, water, waste, material, building, supply chains, and so on, biodiversities. So this is for our clarity and rebrush our knowledge in terms of what really environment comprises of. It will be important for all of us to see in our day-to-day life how environment, these compositions or these ingredients of environment get affected because of our inaction. Coming to the social aspect, which generally we assume, social and governance, both parts, we assume that we are completely aware of it. But I think let's try to go through again the points under or the things that count under social. Under social, we cover social chain vendors, supply chain vendors, human capital, community and stakeholders, customers, and oversight framework. Coming to governance, there are criteria and themes and matrices and key issues which confront all these governance aspects. To begin with, it has to do with corporate governance, say, for example. We see the composition of the board of directors, the composition of the committees under them, whether there is autonomy and independence given to them, whether the top management or the board of directors are keen on really giving equal opportunity to really see that the diversity of gender is really ensured within the enterprise, accountability is established or not, followed by independent directors, what is beyond the normal remuneration to the independent directors, how many number of independent directors are there, followed by shareholders' right, whether the minority shareholders' rights are secured or not, takeover defenses are considered or not. Corporate behavior is another important ingredient of corporate governance, which has to do with CSR strategy, tax transparency, codes of business conduct, and compensation. So I think by these slides, you would have got a fair idea about what really constitutes and what are the compositions or important ingredients of ESG per se. And the gravity of situation in terms of really what I really keep on harping on in terms of saving the planet. Now, having given a good backdrop of ESG and the planet scenario, let us take us through the Indian perspective. Where do we stand as a country in this area? So this is a Wikipedia climate change report of India. India is ranked 4th amongst the list of countries most affected by the climate change. India emits now, it's obviously an alarming figure, 3 gigatons of CO2, which is carbon dioxide, each year. And per capita, carbon dioxide is 2.5 tons per person. Now, this constitutes 7% of the global emissions with 17% of the world's population. What is the impact of this? Tibetan Plateau temperature rises and causes the Himalayan glaciers retreat, threatening the flow rate of the holy Ganges, Brahmaputra, Yamuna, and other rivers. And it is feared Indus River may run dry, as per the WWF report. Several landslides, floods, are projected to become increasingly common. The Climate Change Performance Index of India ranks 8th among 63 countries, which account for 92% of the GHG emissions as per 2021 report. Indian temperature, our country's temperature are already soared up by almost 1 degrees, which is little less than 1 degree, 0.7 degrees Celsius between 1901 to 2018. This slide of mine shows pictographically in terms of, as we run through these pictures left to right. Below, the first one is the Satpura coal-based power station. Just an example to really show how and from where the pollution comes or the emissions come. All these coal-based power stations are big carriers of carbon dioxide. The graph 2 shows the CO2 emissions, though low per person in India, but total emissions are humongous. 3 gigatons, imagine, in a year. Third picture shows our famous Lakshadweep, which was in the limelight just a few days back. The sea levels there have been increasing due to increase in temperature. What does it impact? The coral bleaching event killed 70% corals in the reefs of Lakshadweep and Andamans. The very beauty of our oceans is getting eroded just because of the temperature rise. The fourth picture shows the visualization of temperature change 1901 to 2021. The red and the blue makes it very evident in terms of the soaring mercury levels, creating havoc for our life. Total fossil fuel CO2 emissions, by CO2 I mean carbon dioxide emissions, between 2000 to 2020, the fifth picture depicts country-wise in terms of the increase. And we see in India, 2.2% increase is visible, vis-a-vis China, which was 1.9%. To continue with the environment under India, CO2 emissions, major contributors from the industries are cement and steel industries, and followed by a perennial increase in the industrial sector fuel consumption, which is a gravest concern apart from the coal-fired power stations, in spite of reduction in the number of coal power stations in our country. The government no more now encourages coal-based power stations, but nevertheless, what all are residual numbers of coal stations, power stations which are there are consuming much more coal than earlier, which is again a big concern. Increase in the emission is also because of the agriculture sector due to burning of crops and use of artificial fertilizers. Waste emits carbon dioxide, needing drastic steps to minimize the same. The next slide shows the satellite visualization of the heat wave in 2022, which I think saw the temperature rising to as high as 51 degrees Celsius, causing intense health problems, increase in mortality rate, and increasing migrating population. Reduction in crop yield due to this high temperature is also a big concern. Our yield is eroding, going down, which is also a big concern for our country. Having said about the environment scenario in India, let's not really get totally, I think, down by these figures and the facts which I shared recently. I would like to take you through the mitigation steps which have been taken to eradicate environment threat which we face as a countryman. So to begin with, it was the Paris Agreement in 2015 where the commitment was made, setting a target for our country that by 2030 we'll be reducing this carbon dioxide by almost 33 to 35%. And we will be coming out with National Carbon Trading Scheme by 2023, which has come out already, but it has to be made public and implemented soon. Electricity generation, as of 2021, India generates about 39.8% electricity from renewables energy sources and balance 60% from fossil fuel, which is definitely actionable. And out of this 60%, 51% is generated from coal alone. So coal is singled out to be the major, I think, step towards which we have to take to really reduce and minimize the coal-based consumption of energy production. Household fuel switching to LPG, PNG, and electricity provides health and climate benefits. This is on our plan list to really take it on priority. Our recent COP28 in Dubai, which had happened, had launched the GCI, which is the Green Credit Initiative, incentivizing voluntarily pro-planet actions, plantation waste, degraded lands, and river catchment areas to rejuvenate and revive natural ecosystem. This was the plan made in COP22 and announced very openly to the outside world, which was very impressive and I think singled out in terms of India's appreciation to take some drastic steps in this direction. To provide finance to meet nationally determined contribution in mitigating climate risk, and importance of national mission for sustaining for Himalaya ecosystem, which I just mentioned in my previous slides, the glaciers and affecting the flow of our holy Ganges, holy Brahmaputra, and the rivers, which I mentioned in the last slide. To take it further, India has successfully reduced the emission intensity vis-a-vis its GDP by 33% between 2015 to 2019, which is very encouraging, thus achieving the initial target for 2030. Between 2017 and 2023, India has added about 100 gigawatts of installed electric capacity, of which 80% is attributable to non-fossil fuel-based resources, which is, I think, a very, encouraging step taken, which is showing that not just target setting has been done, but also we have been working on those targets to be achieved. The Indian government is building further on afforestation, rolled out the mangrove initiative to shoreline habitats and tangible incomes, for which the MISTI scheme, which encircles this initiative, has been taken up. This primarily has mangrove plantations along the coastal line on the salt pans, which will help eradicate and bring down the climate change effect. Stronger action to limit global warming by 2025 is another target taken in this COP28. GHG emission will be cut by 43% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Beginning of the end, we see that the emission cuts have not yielded that reducing the temperature increase or curbing the temperature increase by 1.5%. So that is why it is required to swift and bring up our pace to really achieve this target and contain the temperature increase not above to 1.5 degrees. Just to share, very recently there was a news that the European Union has beaten that 1.5 to 1.6 as the increase in temperature, which calls for, I think, change in the plan, change in the track, and change in the initiatives to really see that our target is really achieved. Highlighted the significance of lending, the COP28 highlighted the significance of lending to MSME. I cannot really miss mentioning this because this primarily has the theme of our presentation today. It is to really highlight that MSME has a formidable role in really participating in this movement, and by encouraging them to really invest in renewable energy sector during the session on pioneering sustainability in MSME, the envisioning global growth and local impact organized by International Solar Alliance and CII, Indian Reliable Energy Development Agency Limited. Having said this, quickly now let's try to switch over to what action is already there. And I think we are already in this BRSR regime. So I really popularly say this, that if it is BRSR, it has certainly to do with ESG. So I think we are definitely part and parcel of this ESG movement, which our government has taken and which globally also the world has taken. The ESG themes in our country are captured in India by the NGRBC, which is the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct. Now, what is this National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct? This revolves around the 9 guiding principles, which I will show you in the next slide. And I think that is worth really going through rather than taking them as motherhood statements. We see very clearly the first one, ethics, transparent, accountable. Business should conduct and govern themselves with integrity and in a manner that is ethical, transparent, and accountable. Similarly, on environment, the sixth principle, which has to do with business should respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. Lobbying. Business, when engaging in influencing public and regulatory policy, should do so in a manner that is responsible and transparent. So these are, I need not read this, all the 9 principles, which are, I think, self-explanatory, but I think these are the rule book, we can say, which guides the BRSR and the corporate world and our country. Our market regulator, the Securities Exchange Board of India, made it mandatory, as we know, for the India's top 1,000 companies counted by market capitalization to file the BRSR report. Now, BRSR can be divided into 2 parts very clearly. Business responsibility is the first part, and sustainability reporting is the second part. So unless we don't take any initiatives and action, and we, after having taken the actions, don't really report and make it very transparent to the public, we won't be able to gauge our performance towards this direction. To further elaborate, in the recent times, we clearly notice that climate change impact, mitigation, and adapting, inclusive growth, and transitioning to sustainable economy has emerged as a major issue globally. And there is an increased focus of investors and other stakeholders seeking businesses to be responsible. While the profit objective is important to run commercial organization and even the non-commercial ones, but I think the important part which is coming up is as to how are you really earning this profit? The financial and operational performance is not just important. It is also to see how we are performing in terms of sustainability related factors which have been enumerated earlier. Now, just see, as I said, when it is to do with BRSR, it has to do definitely with ESG. This is the slide depicting the same message. BRSR and ESG go hand in hand. Apart from NGRBC, which I mentioned, which is a guiding light to the BRSR reporting and the commercial world. This is another slide which aligns the thought which I just mentioned. NGRBC, ESG, and BRSR. Coming to the BRSR, I think let's quickly go through and try to get a feel in terms of what does it really look like. BRSR has 3 sections, Section A, Section B, and Section C. If you view it by way of a structure, the structure is divided into 3 parts, Section A, Section B, and Section C. And if we see by theme, it has got 4 sections, environment, social, human capital, and corporate behavior. The roadmap for BRSR has already been laid down by the SEBI, and the year-wise step-by-step approach in terms of how do we have to progress in terms of BRSR embracing by the corporate world is shown in this slide. 23-24, which has just ended or about to get ended, mandatory filing to top 1,000 basic BRSR is already mandatory. And already we see that BRSR core has been pronounced by SEBI. Apart from also, in addition, the assurance also has to be ensured by these top 150 listed companies. 24-25, this number grows to 250 in ensuring BRSR core plus assurance, and yet another step taken to involve the value chain and the assurance of the value chain. This is to be ensured by all these top 250 companies. 25-26, this numbers increase by another 250, which makes it to 500. And the 250 companies which were there in 24-25 will have to do limited assurance. And by 26-27, all 1,000 companies which are enlisted by way of market cap have to be completely compliant to BRSR. Having mentioned about the word assurance, let me also clarify what SEBI has tried to do in terms of differentiating between preparers and assurance providers. What are preparers? Preparers are a set of professionals employed at companies. They also would engage consultants who would help them, and they would also have professionals employed with the consultants. So these are a set of people who are known as preparers. Who are assurance providers? Assurance providers are professionals employed at the assurance providers setup and new entrants to the service of providing assurances. Now, SEBI tries to clarify that preparers cannot be assurers so that there is no conflict of interest. So this slide is to make this clear that there should be no conflict of interest by differentiating the roles of assurance providers and preparers. Now we reach the third dimension of part one, which has to do with helping the MSMEs grow. As I mentioned in my previous slide on the roadmap, that SEBI is now extending this BRSR not only to the companies enlisted, but also to the value chain. So in the value chain, surely we find that MSMEs would also be there, which I showed you, I think, in the earlier slide. Let me take it back. Value chain means suppliers, most suppliers are MSMEs. So that is a silver lining and a big potential and prospect for the MSMEs to really grow. Coming back to my help MSMEs grow, this slide shows that SEBI requires that from 2024, the top 150 cover BRSR for 75% of the supplier by value. So these suppliers, as we mentioned, would be MSMEs. So MSMEs definitely have to really see that they start embracing BRSR right now so that they don't lose the opportunity to really supply to these big companies. Fact two is large importing markets, USA and European Union, have compliance requirements that Indian regulatory requirements meet. So that is a very good, I think, prospect and a good opportunity for us and as MSMEs to really, who are really exporters also to these countries in US and European Union, should, and they will be bound to really go and embrace BRSR right now, which will definitely respond and maybe help in compliance of those foreign buyers from these MSMEs. Last but not the least, the last fact for MSMEs to really embrace BRSR is that sooner or later, even if you ignore the earlier two, this BRSR implementation and compliance will be cascaded down the line across all companies. SEBI is involved only for listed companies, but I think sooner or later, we should really see and take note that in order to participate in this moment, to really save the planet and also be responsible as in the business to be conducted to earn those profits, it will be in our interest to really see and cash on this opportunity to really make the public know that we are abiding by and we are conscious company to the environment and our responsibility towards the public at large. So it is in the interest of MSMEs to really embrace BRSR early as possible. So as CAs, I would say I can touch upon our role here in helping your client to become tier 1 supplier to tier 1 companies and to export in nutshell, in whatever I explained in my earlier slide. If the top brands have to score in their BRSR reporting, then their supplies have to be in the line with the same. So I think you have to go hand in hand with those companies to really see and embrace BRSR. So we consultants have to really help MSME get them there, help them grow on suppliers and grow with them. I have ways and means, the fourth point which I was trying to make, in order to see that our CA's friends' job becomes easier, there is a BRSR product suite which will make our jobs simpler, because it is comparatively a very new kind of a topic by which we are not all of us conversant and comfortable. So I can definitely try to share this in terms of making our jobs easier, to make this a practice as part of our normal practice, which we have been doing till now. This slide shows McKinsey, the famous consultant in the world, which also had done a case study on sustainable procurement. And they had posed 3 questions. The 3 questions are: how is sustainable procurement an opportunity for smaller companies? How to leverage this trend, and what to report? So we as CAs, after gaining this knowledge, I think we can always share this material offline. What is the McKinsey report all about? To really see that how we can really enrich our knowledge on this, which has been followed worldwide and made the European Union also follow, and US also. And why not in our own country, in terms of being knowledgeable and then educating our MSMEs in this direction to really embrace BRSR and become a favorite supplier for our listed companies which are there. So whether our companies, listed companies, demand or not, which eventually they would definitely be doing so, we should start reporting on the BRSR requirements, and all the contents which are there as per the BRSR. We have a simple way of collating that information on behalf of those MSMEs, which we will show you in the later half of our this thing presentation, and make the job easier, and see that we can have an approach and strategy in terms of really motivating our MSMEs and impressing upon them to really see how BRSR can be a growth path for them in the future. To take you through the workflow in terms of how this BRSR can be set up for our MSMEs. For BRSR to be set up, the first step is that we should have a reporting boundary laid down, for which the MSME has a very simple kind of a setup. So this is not a really complex activity for them. However, for big companies, it might be so. So we should straight away find out that where BRSR can be applied to begin with, and so that then it can be implemented wholeheartedly, completely for that particular set of enterprise. Material reporting areas. Then another step is to really set up the materiality reporting areas. That means which are very vital and which are affecting directly the enterprise, as well as enterprise affecting the 3 tenets of our BRSR, which is to do with environment, social, and governance part. So it works both ways, just to emphasize. Then we have to report, then we can help the MSMEs to map the reporting areas in terms of multiple locations, and then find out the data which is required of those locations to be fulfilled and reported back to the main office. For all this, there are customized data with it, which we have made using a tech platform. And then based on that, we can try to broadcast the entire data. So these are the steps involved, or the workflow for setting and really completing the BRSR report. I will not be missing in terms of, not touching upon the green finance for MSME, because that always tempts me to really bring up and emphasize on our MSME. While I think the last session of our committee was particularly on the various schemes which are announced by Government of India for the MSME, but I am addressing only just the green investment and financing opportunities which are there, which have been laid out. So the objective of this MSE, which is for primarily micro and small enterprises, which is MSE gift scheme, this is to promote an adoption of sustainable and eco-friendly practices and technologies and renewable energy sources. So these are green technologies and practices where the financial assistance will be given concessional to the MSEs. And last but not least, to create awareness of the best practices and knowledge sharing in this direction. Sectors covered are resource efficiency, waste management, adaptation of water management, green buildings, environment protection, clean transportation, carbon credit, carbon capture and storage, etc. Eligibility and coverage of this scheme is for those who would be Udyam registered in the portal. They will be eligible and they can utilize the scheme only for existing projects. So what is installed for them in the scheme? You will have an interest subvention of 2% per annum to the term loan limit of 2 crore rupees, which is a huge sum and a huge help for micro and small segment of our enterprises. Risk sharing. Now, Government of India is ready to take risk also for loans to MSE up to 2 crore rupees. However, the subsidy part will have to be seen in terms of what could be there. Subsidy is not really mentioned here in the scheme, but subvention of the interest is definitely there by 2%. Coming to the next scheme, which is the MSE SPICE scheme. It is credit-linked capital subsidy, which I was mentioning in the earlier slide and missing it in the MSE gift scheme. Here, the component would be two-pronged, giving a subsidy as well as awareness generation and IEC. This is the import-export code. The credit-linked capital subsidy would entail a subsidy of as high as 25%, which is a formidable percentage offered by our Government of India. And this is simply to really encourage the circular economy investment and promotion on the part of the MSE. Circular economy, just for your information, has only, just to put it simply, it is three-pronged principle: repair, reuse, and recycle. This is circular economy. And based on that, if the projects are there, this is the scheme for them. Eligibility will be for, again, Udyam registered MSE should be there to become eligible, and this would be only for brownfield projects. So the salient features to further to what I have explained about MSE SPICE on the circular economy investment, maximum amount of investment for indigenous plant and machinery would be 50 lakhs, and this will be for indigenous, and 25% subsidy will be offered for this plant and machinery investment. And under the scheme, if there is imported machinery, that also would be allowed on case-to-case basis, but the subsidy would be maybe not as high as 25%. I would also touch upon the Startup India Seed Fund scheme, which I think generally it starts with MSME only for startups as a setup. So these are all the green, projects which are there under the ESG, I think, banner, in which the MSE and MSME can try to make investments. The monetary support is to the extent of 10 lakh rupees, and the shareholding by Indian operator has to be not less than 51%, and it has to be approved by DPIIT. The grant is to the extent of 20 lakhs for validation of the proof of concept and prototype development of product trials, and up to 50 lakhs of investment for market entry, commercialization by way of convertible debentures or debt-linked instruments. So I think this is a formidable scheme for Startup India Seed Fund scheme, which is known as by the Government of India. And this is the website where you can apply. Coming to the last part of my part one, it is very unusual to find an event that you can ride without a major skill challenge. This is a thought which I would just try to bring up as an icebreaker after a long session. We know very well data analytics, ML, and AI can benefit some, not all. So who are this not all? We are an exception. We as chartered accountants, here is a domain that is a significant opportunity for chartered accountants, which I was trying to refer to, where we can encash as an opportunity for us to really see, adapt and embrace BRSR and bring up to our clients who are the MSME segments, educate ourselves and educate them in terms of embracing BRSR. So leading consultant, which I mentioned, Gartner, makes the case of supply-led, I think, reporting, which can pose two questions for us and the learnings which we can take from this consultant Gartner, which is again a worldwide famous Gartner consultant. Can you be that supplier? And can you help your client to be that supplier? So the questions which we have to raise basis the findings of the study done by Gartner is that can we not really motivate our supplier or that company who wants a supplier, but then they are maybe reluctant because the MSME supplier is not really a kind of a company which is conscious on ESG or not embracing and reporting on BRSR. So surely this is an opportunity where we can impress upon the suppliers, filter suppliers to target passionate innovators. So we can try to educate our MSMEs to really bring in innovation by embracing ESG or green projects which are there. Educate the suppliers on the business need so that they see opportunity in there and establish innovation evaluation criteria by which they can try to go in this direction. And hence, by this endeavor and this initiative, we can try to expand our horizons and add yet another stream of practice, which traditionally we have been following till now, and bring up new areas of practices into our fold. Having said that, let me now show you the step-by-step approach to really grow your practice in this direction. Take a new practice to your existing clients. So the best and an easy way or the low-hanging fruits could be to really tab our own existing clients and bring up the idea of embracing BRSR. So definitely they expect your guidance. So before you can extend your guidance, you have to be knowledgeable enough. So know the practice. What is really there in terms of BRSR, knowledge you have to gain so that you can impart knowledge and handholding to their MSMEs to really embrace BRSR. And let me tell you, there is a potential for at least next 10 years lifespan to expand our practice in this direction. So we should really be open and keen to really learn and know more ourselves to enter into this field. Now, as I mentioned, client awareness and outreach is the utmost or the first requirement which has to be done, for which we should be totally geared up. Show how this grows their business and how early execution is through your interventions. We had seen the slides in terms of how it can become relevant for the MSMEs already in the previous slides. So as a result of that, once you have done that, then you will come to the step, the workflow which I had shown you earlier in terms of collating the data and the information which is contained in the BRSR, which is done by a tech platform which we call Data Widgets. And this is a tech-driven solution that combines the best of consulting and execution by the MSME clients. The full workflow reports are compiled with the tech platform, thus reducing the workload for our CA friends. There are full controls, auditability, process controls, and data confidentiality and security, which is ensured by this tech platform. And through this knowledge gain, grow your practice with your clients in this new area of practice. This marks the end of my part 1, and I would request a short break of 1 minute only so that I can take you through my part 2, which will be coming soon.
Sure, sir.
Shall we start?
Sir, a couple of minutes more.
Okay. You may please let me know when to start. I'm ready. Yeah.
Yes, sir, you can start.
Okay. Welcome back, friends. And I would now be starting the part 2 of my presentation, wherein the first point was on the encashing the opportunity for MSMEs, and second was on CAs and cashing the opportunity to embrace BRSR. So before addressing these 2 points one by one and going and deep diving into BRSR per se, let me take you first of all through the BRSR and its various ingredients and the requirements, and how MSMEs can align to BRSR to encash this opportunity. This is sheerly and purely an enabler for us so that we can impress upon the MSMEs, and MSME friends can directly relate themselves in terms of how they can try to familiarize themselves with BRSR and how this can be made simpler for them with the help of the CA friends. We have already spoken about this in terms of the market regulator, so we'll skip this. And this also we know this is an opportunity area for us to become a tier 1 supplier and buyer for the listed companies. Now coming to the requirements. The information and the data which is required under BRSR is under Annexure 1 of SEBI circular. And there are reporting templates which are there. And we saw the BRSR slide in which the structure was explained, and the structure showed that it had 3 sections: Section A, Section B, and Section C. So these 3 sections would entail data templates which have to be fulfilled, and they have to be then accordingly reported. So let me tell you, the information or the data is quite large. It is not actually financial data. It is non-financial data by far. And for this, we need to really be familiar in terms of really seeing that those requirements are fulfilled. And to really address this big task, we have tried to give a solution which is easy, quick, and cost effective, by which ultimately or finally we'll be able to comply with the BRSR. I'm using the word compliance while it is not mandatory though, but we see that, you can take it that, it is a moral compliance, so to say, because if it is not regulated or regulatory has not really pronounced this requirement by way of a law today for the MSME, we can take it in that spirit. Now, let me tell you, this tax solution, we have tried to atomized, granularized that report into data widgets. And these data widgets are as many as 100 in number. So this figure shows 100. Now the further steps will show you in terms of how do we really make the job simpler to you of these 100 data points which have to be reported under the BRSR. We have divided the data into 3 parts. Data type in terms of being the basic information which has to be reported, essential data points, essential information, and the leading data points, which are further categorized into 2, which we call as mandatory and optional. So mandatory would comprise of the first 2, basic and essential, and leadings are purely optional. Though we would not say that, we need not really address them at all in terms of data collation. But for the time being, let's see that it is our first priority should go for the essential and the basic type of data, which is there, which eventually will become mandatory also when the regulation comes. So we know that every company is supposed to give basic corporate information and certain reporting is essential. And essential indicators are definitely mandatory for all companies to report on. So this is for our understanding in terms of the data divide, which we are trying to do to give a better understanding in terms of really collating the same. As we know that when there is a problem or a challenge, we have to divide the problem into subparts. So this is a step in that direction. To make this problem simpler, we have to divide it into parts. And we have tried to divide it by giving you 3 categories of data, which are basic, essential, and leading. And also further emphasizing on what could be mandatory and what could be basic information, which any enterprise can try to give. Followed by the optional ones, which is a leading indicator. That means if a BRSR today is free to even try to give information on the leading indicators also, or the leading data points, which will definitely give them an edge over all other enterprises in the commercial world. Edge in the sense that they would be reporting something which no other commonly acclaimed MSMEs would be reporting, and they can really see, and we can really see that many companies who are embracing ESG, and they are also trying to declare very publicly those public community affected indicators of their product, the customers really feel attracted towards them and they go for those products which are there. Now, before we really step into the next, slide, I would like to, first of all, let's examine BRSR together. And this we already had gone through. So let me come back to the BRSR structure. BRSR reporting can be seen with 2 angles. I would add one more, which is my favorite, which is the BRSR by index. So we saw in the earlier slide, BRSR by structure, we saw BRSR by themes, and now last one I am adding the BRSR by index. Now we will see one by one what is there with these three angles BRSR reporting. Coming to this structure of A, B, C section, which I mentioned earlier, the section A comprises of the information as follows, which is the basic information, corporate information, which one has to report in the BRSR, followed by the business, the nature of business you are in, products you are dealing with, markets you are catering to, operations, group structure, and you have to share the materiality, which we just took in the earlier slide, mentioned about materiality, reporting boundary, which also we covered in the previous slide, which is there. So this is the information which is there in section A. Coming back to the original slide and visiting what is there in section B, you see the data tool. This is a tool which is a self-contained one single sheet, which will drill you down to the minutest of detail here, which is there required under BRSR. This is guided by NGRBC, Management and Policy. And if you have to see the data widget, which we have tried to make in this tech platform, is as follows. This is section B, and section B has 9 principal guided points which are there. And this is the type of information which is required, which has to do with policy and managerial process, ethics, safe, sustainable products, those 9 principles which we had seen in the earlier slide. On the same principles, we are supposed to give information in this manner. Right? Now, a question could be that, these data wickets, are they really compliant or the same which the BRSR, SEBI, our market regulator, is trying to expect from us? For this, what we can do is we can slice dice and click on this link, which is the original document as per BRSR, placing this requirement under the BRSR report under section B. So this is section A information on CSR details which are to be required. This is point number 22, and under section 135, we are supposed to give this information. So like this, we can try to drill down and go through the original document which is there. Similarly, for other points also, you can slice dice by seeing that what is the original SEBI document saying, and this is the format given by the data template by the SEBI in terms of information to be given under this point number 10 and 11, under the banner of management and process disclosures. This is the same format in origin as per the Annexure 1, which is already shown in the, which is as a part of the, which forms a part of the SEBI circular, right? So we come back to section C, which is to do with, this slide will show. Again, you can click one by one in terms of what is there, in terms of questions or the information to be passed on under ethics, under safe, sustainable product. Principle-wise performance disclosures have to be given under section C. And say, for example, if I have to click on safe, sustainable products, this leads us to this information, and which is further divided into about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 9 templates will have to be there, which have to be opened and which have to be filled. So say if I click sustainable sourcing to begin with, it leads me to sustainable sourcing. And what is it mentioned here? Sustainable sourcing is the selection of vendors on the criteria that support E and S aspect of ESG, which is to do with green or society, the competent vendors. So if the vendors are competent to really answer to E aspect and S aspect of ESG, they would be taken under sustainable sourcing. Now, if you have to refer a document to add to your knowledge, there is a link here in terms of giving the sourcing, how through a report the guidance has been given by none other but by UN in terms of how sustainable sourcing and procurement can be done. So one can add to the knowledge going through this original document and then really see that how we can guide our clients in turn, the MSME, in terms of ensuring that the vendors are sustainable sourcing of material from them. Now, seeing the data requirement as per the original circular, this is the original template which is there, which needs to be really gone through. This is the guidance given, first of all, under Annexure 2 for the same point. And then the information which is required is mentioned below. And we have to just click at the data widget after reading this guideline so that we can enable the client to really fill this information after having a good understanding. This is the data template to be filled as per BRSR on the same information of sustainable sourcing, which we just read in terms of the backdrop and the knowledge about how to really conclude that this is a sustainable sourcing vendor. Okay, getting back to now again the original slide. So we have seen that our section A, section B, section C, what do they look like and what kind of information is there to be filled. And after having said that, we can try to also now, after having becoming familiar to the structure of section A, section B, section C, let's now see with different angle, which is the theme-based angle of BRSR. If we click on environment, say for example, it takes you to this another slide, which is showing the components of that environment, which I had shown you in my previous slide, the things that count under environment. Suppose if you have to address water, what is it that water, the information regarding the water has to be covered? What is it comprising of? We can then try to cover each point-wise information which is required under BRSR. You can see the minute details which are really to be captured so that we can try to really authentically and ethically try to report on these parameters of BRSR. Say, for example, on water consumption, it is said that next World War will be fought over water, and water is an incredible scarce resource with the global warming adding to the woes. Obviously, we know that very well. Now, if you have to add to your knowledge about the water table and the water scarcity, we can click on this link and try to go back to really find out that this is a report of Global Water Resources 2022, WMO report number 1333. So these are all authorities in terms of making study and making you aware of the problem, intensity of the problem. And based on that, one can try to see how we can relate to the MSME and the kind of products they are trying to manufacture or the kind of services they are trying to render, which will affect the water consumption. And basis which, once you have the adequate knowledge, you can make the MSME aware and see that how they can try to report religiously after going through the guidance document under water consumption, which is again a NGRBC guidance given. And under these guidelines, they can gauge their water consumption, which is getting affected because of their nature of business, nature of product, or nature of service. This is the guidance, and this is the link to the data widget. Similar format, but the information required is corresponding to the point which is mentioned in the BRSR, which can be filled after giving a thoughtful and actual field realities. Based on that, one can try to report. So similarly, I can take you through the other slide in terms of covering the other aspect of environment. Water we covered, say for example, biodiversity. Now biodiversity, if you want to really know, we want to first of all know about biodiversity in detail. So one can try to see that these ecological and sensitive zones are there covered under this point. And biodiversity impacts direct and indirect. The impact has to be really assessed and prevention and remedial measures have to be reported under this. So we can try to see how we can try to go through the data information which is required, which we can click here through a button and try to see that what is the guidance given by the NGRBC, and basis that then switch over to the template or the data wicket which we have tried to make in the tech platform and fill this information accordingly. So friends, I hope you are familiarizing themselves with this tech tool and how it is making the job easier for you to really fill in the information, and slicing, dicing, all links are there so that you can enrich your knowledge on each and every point, even if we are not technically very well off to really go behind the nitty-gritties of these points which are there. We might be broadly be aware of all these, but not really in detail aware of this. So by giving those examples in the last few slides, I'm switching over to the next theme, which is the social theme. Social theme, we know the ingredients which we had shown in the earlier slide. This is much more in detail because they were about 4-5 only things which were counting under social. But I think BRSR is needing much more details than what was shown in the earlier slide by me. Suppose, for example, we want to enrich our knowledge about human rights. So first of all, human rights, we can click here and see that this slide takes you to these components of human rights: management and training, salaries and wages, grievance and complaints, due diligence, HR in the value chain, etc. So each of these we can try to drill down to find out what is it in the value chain under human rights. This further divides into human rights in contracting and human rights assessment in the value chain further. So clicking further into there in contracting, it takes you to this point in terms of contract outsourcing has taken wings to the, so that the principal companies do not have to look at the certain issues as per global corporate standards. That ends with ESG in focus. So one of the things that companies can do additionally is to demand that those to deal with the following criteria and the best practices which are followed worldwide. So if you have to slice dice on this further on human rights in contracting, we can try to click on this button and try to get the information under the guidance note and switch over to the template which is required to be filled. So it is as simple as that in terms of really going to the point which is a requirement of the BRSR, trying to know and enrich your knowledge about it, and then further getting the client filled that information. Right? So I hope you are finding this to be interesting and simple for you to really address this problem which we were thinking that to be too big for us to handle. Made simpler for you in this one single tech platform. We now switch over to human capital to demonstrate that what is covered under human capital: health, safety, people in the value chain, employee relationship, labor practices, and remuneration and wage related. So we can click any one of them, say remuneration and wage related. That further branches out to minimum wages, salaries and wages. So which will entail this further information. A new Code on Wages Act in 2019 subsumes a number of older labor laws that included a minimum wage act whereby unskilled workers would get at least a certain sum of money as wages. So what is that code is also mentioned, and it is there by way of a link which we can try to just press and try to go through that to enrich our knowledge and update ourselves in terms of what is this code all about. Guide to minimum wage in 2023. This is in Indian context. I'm trying to tell you very clearly so that then you can try to see that whether this is implemented or not and report accordingly. Switching over to our another feature which is there to do with slicing and dicing this further information. It lands you to the original BRSR format, which is to be reported on the minimum wages under this tabulated form. And with this template itself, there is a data bucket which is there in the link, which takes you to this information, which is as per the tech tool, and which we have to fill on the similar lines, which is required by the BRSR, and then submit. So the question could be that after submitting, what happens? We will come to that surely and try to visit that point. So having said that, in terms of, taking the different angle of BRSR and how does it really look like in terms of information, and how the tech tool takes you through the data templates in a very simple manner to make you knowledgeable also, and also make you fill the information on behalf of the client, has been shown. Now coming to the last angle, which is the BRSR by index, which I said it was my favorite, because this is a self-contained, I think, slide or the angle by which you can see that theme-wise also it is covered, structure-wise also it is covered, and it gives you a complete one-page summary of what all information is required under BRSR and the enormity of data which is to be compiled under BRSR, made simpler by an index which is there. So you can see, if you go section-wise, general disclosure, which is section A, management and process disclosures, which was section B, and section C, which is there, is on the ethics part, and which is basically the 9 principles which is there, which we have already shown in the previous slides. So theme-wise, if you want to know, here there are various points which are mentioned under the theme of environment. This is the theme of governance, and this is the theme under social, human capital. All those points, all those headings which we have seen earlier in the earlier slides are contained in this. From this master slide also, you can land into same information which I showed in the earlier slides. Say, for example, I can take you through to, say, electricity and energy under environment. So it takes you through to electrical energy and energy intensity fuel. And if we click further, it can enrich your knowledge towards this, taking you to this energy consumption slide. On energy consumption, if you want to know that any further data repository or any knowledge repository is there or not, which you can refer, yes, surely we can do that, which is attached here by way of a link. And you can go through the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, I think, website, where this information has been gathered, and you can go through that to really see how we can conserve energy, and whether the MSME is actually able to do it or not, can honestly report accordingly. Right? So this is an Indian website, we all know that, and basis this knowledge, we can try to educate the MSME client and have this information filled. And similar to the other, I think, data templates, slicing, dicing feature is also there in this, I think, the way we had been seeing the last third angle of BRSR, which is the index angle. Slicing, dicing will land you to the template, which is the original one as per the circular of SEBI. And as well as it will take you to the link where you have to see the data bucket under the tech platform, which is as follows. And you can fill this information and submit. Okay, so we have covered BRSR by deep diving into it, and I was also trying to know about the kind of information which is required. The number of data templates which are there were huge in number. So seeing that, I think we should not get bogged down because of that. This tech tool is going to help us out. And you can see that now as I take it further in terms of what do we do once we do the categorization of the data into data type, basic, essential, and leading, as well as also seeing that whether they are essential or optional, mandatory or optional. I think when the information is too much and there's a huge task ahead of us, we should try to prioritize. And we have tried to do exactly that in terms of making priority 1 and priority 2. Under priority 1, there would be, out of total 100 slides, 100 data templates or data widgets, we will have 52 which we can easily fill with the help of this data tool. And the basis of this prioritizing is very clearly based on the applicability, importance, and materiality. So with this ease of these three aspects, one can try to prioritize. This is the criteria which we have followed. However, you are at a free will to really decide on your own criteria also to prioritize, so that it becomes simpler for you to really fill the information on the first go. Followed by, of course, the priority number 2 is not that we should ignore it. We should try to go by the priority number 2 also. But I think immediately what we can address is the priority number 1 by way of importance and applicability, where we can directly get the answers. And it is a low-hanging fruit for us. And it is also important and critical for our business to really report, on which we can try to cash and try to project a better image of the MSME to the outside world. So under the basic criteria, there are 7 data widgets. Under essential, there will be 33, and under leading, there will be 12. So what we found in the earlier slide, the total 100 data widgets divided into 3 parts. Basic had 15 data widgets, essential had 52, and the leading had 33. These 15 under basic are further split into one priority, first priority, and the second priority. Similarly, the essential also, and similarly the leading also. So to address 7 data widgets, we can try to go through the next slide, next link. Say, for example, we should start with the basic information to be filled, and these 7 data widgets will cover the basic corporate information, which we saw earlier in the BRSR slide, which we deep dived into earlier. So now, suppose if you have to press this link of number 1, which is the first, data point to be addressed under basic category. The same information which we saw, general disclosures, are enlisted here. Similarly, if suppose we have to now go back to the priority screen and see that we want to see what all information is there under the essential category of data, we can try to see and click here and come to this in terms of, this is the information under 2. Second, priority of essential data. This is the step 2, which we are saying we should take in terms of filling the data information using the data templates and the data widgets, which we try to show you. So I think so you are making sense for you to really understand in terms of the kind of information and the quantum of information which is required by the BRSR, as well as the strategy or the approach which we can follow to really fill this data information. The approach which we have taken is to really divide the data points into parts. Data widgets are 100 in number. To summarize, the data types are 3, which are basic, essential, and leading. Further categorized into essential and which are also and basic, which are both taken under category of mandatory, and second category, which is also the leading category, can also be taken as optional, which we can take it right now also and even later on if we wish to. So the divide between priority 1 and priority 2 is only that we will be addressing on priority 52 data templates under the various categories of data types and try to fill the information. And the priority 2 would be for 48 data templates and data widgets, which we will address in the next as a next step. So then, having said that and followed this approach, we can try to now see that how do we collect the information. That we have also shown, I guess. So we can try to now skip this also and try to go back to So I think the work involved, we saw that data has been collated. After the data has been collated for the report, what we need to do is that it has to be, the approach which we have to follow is that this involves collection of wide range of data, which is primarily non-financial in nature. And some of the data can be technical in nature also. So we need to really take help of the technical people filling this information if we are not really equipped with that kind of knowledge, etc. And the process which we can follow is the information needs to be captured in the SABI format. And the data, we have the links, appropriate links of SABI already shown into the data tool, which is there. Data has to be collected in the data widgets, and the data widgets are highly customizable with various control features, which we are free to really do. We can customize the data widgets, what I mean to say. BRSR is not mandatory for all, but can be self-certified by the client company. Technical data and emissions and water, etc., and all those technical points can be certified by an expert only, a subject matter expert who should be qualified. Technical assurance professionals are there. Names are available with us. And coming to data PDF can be sent by the CA consultant, which our practicing CA friends can do with a covering letter, and the client can print the report on its letterhead accordingly. So this is what I was trying to show, the step-by-step approach in terms of what the MSME would relate to by understanding the BRSR, deep diving into each component of it with different angles, and also seeing that how the CA friends can really help them to really get into this deep diving and enrichment of the knowledge on their own part, as well as the MSME per se. Now we come to the last part of my part 2, which is to do with how the CAs can encash this opportunity. I mentioned about this same slide, but now this is, as per the tech tool, getting into how to grow the practice. I just mentioned that you can address this and this BRSR to the existing client of yours. So if you plot into a 2x2 matrix, your existing clients and new clients, on the x-axis, on the y-axis, if you plot existing practice areas and the new practice areas, you will clearly see that this is a low-hanging fruit, which is the best and the easiest. That means the low-hanging fruit would be that your existing clients can surely be addressed first as a first step towards introducing BRSR. And by BRSR embracing, they will be definitely be able to grow their business, which you already know how you can impress upon them, and try to see that after when they really embrace BRSR and embracing this ESG movement, which is though not mandatory in nature for them, but nevertheless, they can try to see that how this can be giving them an edge in the market as well as in the community and the public at large. I already spoke about know the practice part in terms of enriching the knowledge. How can you really make the client more aware of it by educating them on MSME and by enriching them about the BRSR particularly, and the data wickets I could take you through, which is a tech tool already. The full workflow, what is it exactly? So reports are compiled with data provided by your client. So our responsibility is only to really help them facilitate by making this process simpler for them. So data is collected through the data tool for the client. Data can be cross-checked by the client independently, and copy of this data can be kept and forwarded to them. So this is all through the data wickets which is there, and we can try to really facilitate this entire exercise by giving this data tool, data wickets in through the data tool, and make the job simpler for them. Controls and checks are inbuilt by way of data security, confidentiality, and this entire data submitted is totally secured and encrypted which will preserve the confidentiality and security of the data which will be captured. So I think this safeguards our interest and also see that the client's requirement is also fulfilled. And at the same time, you add to a new stream of practice in your normal practice itself, and see that this becomes a win-win situation for MSME as well as the CAs who are practicing with their previous clients, and try to encash on this opportunity, taking this as a time in the time frame of, say, in the first year we address the essential and the basic information to be filled, and under the optional part one should address all those optional points as well, so that we improve over the kind of information which we can help providing by the MSME and report in the BRSR in the years to come as the year pass by. In the whole process, in the second and third year, we will be able to add to our knowledge also, be hands-on also, at the same time more confident in terms of giving consultation on this new area of practice. With this, I end my presentation and would invite questions,
Yes.
if at all there are.
Yes, sir. There is one question from the participants. How can companies account for greenhouse gases, GHG, when their freight or fleet operations are outsourced? So are there any specific widgets for this purpose?
The voice was a little feeble. Can you speak a little louder?
Right.
Or by any chance the volume can be increased?
Okay. Is it okay now? Am I audible?
Little louder.
Now?
Yeah, but
Hello? PPT 1 minute के लिए continue रखो. Sir, the question is about companies accounting for greenhouse gases. How they account for greenhouse gases when their freight or fleet operations are outsourced. I'm adding to that question whether there is a specific widget for that, or how exactly they account for the greenhouse gas emissions accounting when the fleet or the freight is outsourced. So they have given the contract to someone else, and now they want to account that there is a new cab also, blue cab, which is giving the transport, the consumers, the passengers, the number of CO2 they saved. So is there anything that you offer through this application? I think it's the question. How you can help the companies measure this greenhouse effect that was saved when their freight operations are outsourced.
see, the very consciousness of capturing the carbon footprint is by itself different expertise which is required for that purpose. And there are a lot of researches already going on. There are also, I think, set formats in terms of measuring and try to convert in terms of the emissions which we try to really emit by using different sources of our conveyance, for example, the blue cab which you mentioned also. In terms of, say, for example, I can just say that the equation is like this, that if 6,000 kilometers of diesel cabs are used, it amounts to almost 1 ton of carbon dioxide. So these kind of equations are made by which one can try to measure the emissions and how much we have saved these emissions by switching over to the, I think the green means the blue cab, say, for example. And accordingly, one can try to equate and try to find out how much we have saved so that we can try to report accordingly. So if you have to talk about outsourced agencies who are doing it, we'll have to make them do this measurement for you, or you will have to overview completely their operations in terms of measuring constantly so that you can report correctly.
So is there any widget for this in your this system, this software?
There would be definitely be widgets for this also, because I think the subject matter experts are there to really guide you in terms of, what kind of measurement can be there for what type of manufacturing process or any activity which is being carried out, which emits CO2 or the greenhouse gases.
All right. So there is another question. So this question asks about the fees that is to be charged for this type of audit. Is there any minimum recommendation by the ICI which is applicable? And if there is any, then what is it?
I didn't get the first part of it, your question.
The fees charged for these types of audits, these types of compliances, I should say, not audits exactly. These types
Charges?
Yeah, the CA should, any recommendation by ICI or some minimum that you should seek, like basis the turnover of the company or basis the the loan, the reduction in interest rate or carbon credits earned for which carbon certificates can be issued, or how should they manage the fees? That is the question.
See, really speaking, it's a very, very, I think, difficult question to answer in terms of how to fix up the fee, seeing the basis which we can try to have for such kind of audits which are there, because it's a completely a new field for all of us. We have to see the quantum of work and kind of what accuracy of, I think, information which the client is unable to be giving under the reporting formats which have been pronounced. So really speaking, I would really not be able to answer in terms of what basis should be formed for the fixing up the fees for such kind of work. And to be very true, so to say, if I have to ask, say, like in general course of the audit also, how do you fix the fees? Do you see the turnover only and basis that straight away we do it? There are many other parameters which has to be seen apart from the turnover or profitability or the scale of operations. We have to just not see the kind of how big or a smaller company is, but the assignment and the kind of affordability of the client and the kind of value addition we'll be able to do honestly as a professional. So I see that it is totally on us to really see how honestly we can try to assess the situation and try to charge genuinely to a client on such type of audits or due diligence.
All right, thank you for that answer. I think there are no. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are no further questions. In the end, I would just like to wind up by saying that it was a very enlightening session explaining lucidly how we CAs can help our MSME clients to become ESG compliant for their own personal benefit and for the society at large. The MSMEs need to genuinely indulge in ascertaining their own benefits, like the 2% rate reduction, the credit links capital subsidy up to 25%, or you can say the carbon credits that they can earn and sell in the market. And also, very importantly, that you highlighted the society at large by earning the profits sustainably. It's not just about earning profits, it's about earning the profits sustainably. That is why Blue Cap is on the rise, because everyone is supporting that cause of the society at large. So even the consumers are in for those companies who earn the profits sustainably. And I also would like to thank you for building a software to aid the CAs in early and very easy adoption to leverage this situation or this environment to their advantage at the earliest, so as to gain the maximum of what you repeatedly called low-hanging fruits that are there on offer. Thank you, sir, so much for coming and enlightening us on this very important and upcoming topic of ESG.
Thank you. And I would not really fulfill my obligation unless I don't really thank the ICI and the committee. And above all, my knowledge partner and my tech, I think, partner, Strategem, who has really been able to really facilitate this entire exercise and endeavor which we as CAs would really fervently would like to really fulfill by adding this to a new stream of practice for all of us and making this job easier for all of us. So for all inquiries, I think most welcome to really contact me so that I can try to facilitate this exercise in terms of, making the job easier for all of us to really percolate it down the line and be as the part of the movement in terms of saving this planet and saving the community and doing our job responsibly along with the enterprises. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you
So-
for helping us build a better future for us, for our future, for our society, for our children. Thank you.
Thanks.